Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me out. It's my second year here with the annual Latina Maternal Health Event. Tracy, my condolences always go out to you and the loss of your family. It was definitely not necessary, especially being that happened 4 months after the medical community in this town let me die 6 days after having birth. So imagine spending your whole life just dreaming of being a mother, to find out finally at the age of 37 that your dream has finally come true. But that dream, it quickly turns into a nightmare. By the 13th week of pregnancy, things were already off with my body. I already knew things were not right. My blood pressure was high, completely abnormal for me. I brought it to my doctor's attention right off the top. I, however, was told it was just normal pregnancy symptoms. We'll keep an eye on it. So being the first time that I had ever been pregnant, I believed him. Pregnancy was extremely tough on me. I didn't understand why. I do now. I had preeclampsia, and I'm pretty sure I had it from week 13 on, but it wasn't being diagnosed, and it wasn't being treated. Women, you also need to know, even if your doctors do test your urine or the proteins to see if you have preeclampsia, those proteins, they do not always drop into your urine, which means you can have preeclampsia and be getting that urine test every time you go in to see your OB. And they can keep saying, oh, you have nothing wrong with you, there's no urine in your protein. You can still have preeclampsia. So if you have symptoms, ignore that test, push, fight. I started swelling very early on. The swelling, it continued to just get worse, but I was still being told normal pregnancy symptoms, everything is fine, not to worry. I continued through my pregnancy, and away from the preeclampsia that was kicking my butt, I was surviving, but mentally I felt weak. I kept being told I was fine, but it just kept getting worse and worse, and my health kept declining. By my 3rd trimester, it progressed and eventually became undiagnosed and untreated peripartum cardiomyopathy, along with undiagnosed, untreated preeclampsia. I had increased urination at night. I had extreme swelling from the toes all the way up to my head. I would bite my mouth at night. It was just overly swollen. I couldn't lay flat because I couldn't breathe. I had to sleep sitting up at night in order to even get any rest. Between the lack of oxygen and increased nighttime urination, there was literally no rest. I felt miserable, just plain horrible. My blood pressure was still through the roof. Nothing was being done. I was still being told everything was normal pregnancy symptoms. Don't worry about it, just go home, you're overreacting. I even took a trip into labor and delivery around 34 weeks or so. And again, everything's fine. Head home, there's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your head. Normal pregnancy symptoms, and me being a first-time mom, not knowing any better, I believed what they were telling me. I believed I was making this worse than what it was. That this is just how pregnancy was, even though I was beyond miserable. I couldn't do anything. I was in so much pain, so swollen, it hurt to walk. The swelling that I mentioned of biting my mouth at night, my heart racing, seeing my pulse bounding out of my wrists, occasions of severe pain, pulsating pain that would hit in my lower back, coming from my chest. It would would be so severe I'd literally be frozen where I couldn't move for minutes at a time. But guess what? All normal pregnancy symptoms. Or so I was told. How my son and I survived all this, really couldn't tell you. It's really nothing short of a miracle. Luckily, I had already been scheduled for a C-section on December 18th of 2018, 6 days prior to my due date. Not because of pregnancy health issues, but because I had severe uterine fibroids that I had been dealing with for a good 20 years of my life. So C-section had nothing to do with what was going on with my pregnancy problems. After they delivered my son, he was taken from me. And I don't remember a thing for the next half hour. When I finally got to meet my son in recovery, there was nothing normal. In the hospital, they didn't care. I had extremely high blood pressure, close to 170 over 100. I was still massively swollen. None of the swelling leaving. My oxygen numbers were down in the high 80s. I was still released to go home. I asked to see my medical records before being released and was denied. Nothing was okay. And I was still believing this was just how pregnancy worked because this is what I was being told. Well, on December 24th at around 6-7 a.m., I fainted. My son's father, he called 911. I woke up before the paramedics arrived that morning and wasn't aware that the baby that was crying was mine. I didn't know I had a baby. The EMTs loaded me up and I was out again. I had a massive seizure on the way to the ER and my heart stopped at the ER. Cardiac death. I was, by the grace of God, shocked back to life. I was then intubated and in a medically induced coma for almost a day and a half. During that time, my family had been called to the back room to be told to start making plans on where my son would go because they didn't think I was going to wake back up. Luckily, I made a miraculous recovery. I woke up. But when I woke up, my ICU room was decorated with photos of my son and his name written with them. Because no one thought I was going to remember my son because I hadn't before I passed out. I didn't even know I had that boy. But luckily I did. I lost 60 pounds of fluid that first week. I had been drowning in my own body. I was back down to my pre-pregnancy weight. The only weight I gained during pregnancy was fluid. I finally got to go home, still uncertain of my future. I was fitted with a life vest, which is a portable defibrillator that you wear so that if your heart stops, it can shock you back to life. It gives directions to strangers to stay away, things like that. It's got sticky pads on the front and back. I had to wear it 24/7. The only time I could take it off was if I needed to get into the shower, but it needed to be in and out. I had to start taking medications, which meant no breastfeeding for my son. However, this machine, it would only give you a few second warning beep before it would go off. So that meant that I had a huge fear with my son, which meant for the first 6 months or so of our relationship when I wore this device, I missed out on my bonding with my child. Because if the machine would have gone off, and it would have really been shocking me going off, it would have killed him. That's the kind of shock that it would have produced to him. If I would have been laying in bed with him and it would have gone off, he would have died. So I didn't get that bonding time with my child that I should have gotten, all because undiagnosed, untreated. You don't know what you're talking about. First time pregnancy, and I believe them. It can happen to any woman out there. There are causes, there are definitely issues that cause different races and ethnicities and cultures to have more medical issues. But you need to tell anybody you know, any woman you know. Fight for yourself. Advocate for yourself. There is a simple blood test that is out there that we do not have in part of our, pregnancy, maternal health, which is a pro-BNP, which can give these numbers to tell us if the heart is going into failure. It's around $150 blood test. Don't be afraid to ask your doctors for that test. Don't get it confused. Don't let them send you in for a BMP. You need a pro-BNP that is going to give them the answers on how your heart is functioning and let them have a much better idea. There are things. I want you guys to know that now 3 and 4.5 years later, my heart function, it is technically back to normal. I am one of the lucky ones. I still struggle daily mentally. I think I probably always will. I will take medication for the rest of my life, but I'm getting there. I'm finding my voice. I'm finding our voice. I don't want anyone to be scared. I want everyone to be aware. Together we can bring awareness and we can beat this. Peripartum cardiomyopathy definitely isn't rare. It's rarely diagnosed. You can have all the symptoms I had, or you can have none of the symptoms that I had. But just speak up and demand your doctor give you that NT-proBNP test. It's simple, inexpensive, insurance-covered lab test. Together we have to fight for ourselves, ladies. We have to fight to save more mommies, more babies. We can't let what happened to these other mothers that are up here speaking about their daughters that they lost or their grandchildren that they lost. This isn't fair. And Tracy's family story is a heartbreaking one to me that happened 4 months after I dropped dead in this community, in our medical community. And they knew what was going on. And they still just threw Debbie out the door every time she asked for help. It's not okay. So we need to all band together, and we need to keep fighting for this. Together we can do this, guys. Thank you.